What if I told you that over 1,000 years ago, long before Columbus set sail, explorers from Scandinavia reached the shores of North America? Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But the truth is, the Vikings, famous for their raids, warriors, and seafaring skills, were the first Europeans to venture across the Atlantic. In this first episode, we're going to uncover their extraordinary journey. We'll follow their path from the cold shores of Greenland to a land they called Vinland, a place full of mystery and potential. So sit back as we explore the Vikings' incredible voyage to America. In this episode, we'll look at how the Vikings, led by Eric the Red and his son Leif Erikson, embarked on a daring expedition that would make them the first known Europeans to step foot in the New World. We'll explore their journey across the Atlantic, their brief stay in a mysterious land they called Vinland, and how their interactions with the indigenous peoples of the Americas may have shaped their story. Along the way, we'll also uncover the evidence that proves their remarkable feat and discuss the legacy of their voyage that has often been overlooked by history. Our story begins in the cold and rugged lands of Scandinavia, where the Vikings, fierce and adventurous seafarers, called home. By the 10th century, they were already masters of the sea, known for their longships that could navigate both the open ocean and shallow rivers. The Vikings were not only warriors, but traders, explorers, and settlers who ventured far beyond their homeland in search of wealth, new territories, and adventure. One of the most famous Vikings, Eric the Red, left his home in Norway after being exiled for murder. He sailed westward and discovered Greenland, a land that would serve as a stepping stone for future exploration. In the late 900s, Eric the Red made a historic journey to Greenland, naming it so to attract settlers despite its icy conditions. Greenland became a thriving Viking colony, and Eric's son, Leif Erikson, grew up there. But Leif wasn't content to just stay in Greenland. He wanted to explore even further. Driven by stories of a land to the west, Leif set sail in the early 11th century, determined to find this mysterious place. In the year 1000, Leif Erikson sailed from Greenland, leading a crew of men across the vast Atlantic. Navigating without modern tools, they relied on the sun, stars, and the natural signs around them. After weeks of uncertainty and treacherous seas, Leif and his crew spotted land, a land that would forever change the course of history. This land, which they named Vinland, would be the first recorded encounter between Europeans and the Americas. The exact location of Vinland has been debated for centuries, but it's generally believed to be somewhere along the coast of what is now Newfoundland in Canada. Vinland was a place unlike any the Vikings had seen before. The land was rich with resources, fertile soil for crops, abundant forests for timber, and wild grapes growing in the wild. The Vikings were amazed by the abundance of natural resources. The name Vinland, meaning wineland, likely came from the plentiful grapes Leif's crew found growing there. It seemed like paradise to the explorers, a land full of promise and potential. The Vikings didn't just explore, they began to settle. At Vinland, they set up a small encampment, likely somewhere along the northern tip of Newfoundland, where archaeologists have uncovered the remains of Viking buildings and tools. The site, known as LAnseAuxMeadows, is the only known Viking settlement in North America. This settlement, though small, proved that the Vikings had the capability to establish a presence in this new land, gathering timber, fishing, and trading with the indigenous peoples they encountered. But the Vikings were not alone in Vinland. They encountered indigenous peoples, whom they called Skraelings. The exact nature of these encounters remains unclear. The sagas suggest there were both peaceful exchanges and violent clashes. The indigenous peoples, likely ancestors of the Inuit or other First Nations, would have seen the Vikings as strange visitors. These encounters, though brief, were some of the first contacts between Europeans and the native populations of North America. Despite the opportunities that Vinland offered, the Viking settlement didn't last. The Vikings faced numerous challenges: hostile encounters with indigenous peoples, harsh winters, and the difficulty of maintaining a settlement so far from home. By the early 11th century, they abandoned Vinland and returned to Greenland, leaving behind only traces of their brief presence in the New World. For centuries, the story of the Vikings in America was forgotten. But in the 1960s, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a Viking settlement at LAnseAuxMeadows in Newfoundland, confirming what the sagas had long suggested. The Vikings had reached North America long before Columbus. This discovery changed our understanding of history and showed that the Vikings were the first Europeans to explore the New World. The Vikings' journey to Vinland may have been short, but it left an enduring legacy. Their exploration and brief settlement were a remarkable achievement that was overshadowed by later explorers. In the next episode, we'll dive deeper into the impact of Viking exploration on future European expeditions to the Americas and how their legacy was rediscovered centuries later. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next adventure into history.